Donald Trump is president. I think if George Washington were alive today, he'd look around and say, what the f*** is going on? How am I still alive? That was a joke that I wrote back when I was around 20 years old and I was doing stand-up comedy as a college student. This is probably a good example of why I stopped doing it. I wasn't great. I was okay. I did some one-liners. It was a lot of fun. I do not regret doing it, but there were some things that I wish I could go back and tell myself. These are 6 things that I wish I knew at 20. Number 1, take responsibility. I mentioned it a few times before that I've graduated with $97,000 in student loan debt, but what I didn't mention is that $10,000 of that would never have existed if I had simply sat down with my guidance counselor for 30 minutes. It was my final semester at college. I sat down to do the paperwork necessary to get my diploma, to finally graduate, to get that piece of paper that cost so much money, and I realized that there were 2 required classes that I had failed to take. Physical education and a basic math class. That's right, in order to graduate, I had to take basic algebra and weightlifting. And say what you want about how ridiculous it is that a broadcast telecommunications major had to take these courses to begin with. I had completely avoided taking responsibility. I had avoided going into my counselor's office. I had pushed it off for so long that it ended up costing me over $10,000. The lesson is that you have to take responsibility for yourself. Nobody's gonna do it for you. This is really one of those growing up moments when you realize that once you go to college, your parents aren't gonna be there to fix and solve everything for you. You need to figure it out for yourself. And this was a very hard and a very expensive lesson that I learned firsthand. Confidence builds by doing. I read a ton of books in college. Knowledge. Almost none of them for my actual courses, but for my own self-development, entrepreneurial books, things that I was really passionate and interested in. And while they taught me a lot and helped to lead me down the path that I am on today and help guide my values, principles, and morals, there are only so many books that you can read about self-development or about building a business until you actually go out and put it into practice and you actually try for yourself. That's when you really learn. When I look back at some of the skills where I had the most growth, filmmaking, photography, interviewing, even weightlifting and making coffee, it wasn't by reading books or watching a video. I learned the most by actually doing, by putting these things into practice. It's typically not that easy to see progress in the beginning. It can be really frustrating when you set out to try to learn photography for the first time. It's hard to see the improved difference between the first day and the second day. But without a doubt, I can always look back over the course of 2 years and see massive improvement. It doesn't matter how good I've gotten. It doesn't matter what point I am in my career. Even today, looking back 2 years ago, I sometimes cringe at the things that I've made. But really that cringe is just an indication that I'm heading in the right direction, that I'm learning. And I'm really learning not by reading, not by researching, but by actually getting out and doing. Document more. I really wish that I had taken more time when I was younger to document the experiences that I was having, to be able to look back at a younger version of myself when I was struggling, when I was just starting out as a filmmaker, when I was just starting my very first business. This is something that Gary Vee recommends often. He suggests people should go out and document versus creating, because documenting is pretty easy. It's just showing your journey, the things you're working on, versus creating, which is very time intensive. But this isn't just an idea that's relevant for filmmakers and creatives. This is something that I think everybody can gain a little bit from, even if you just take a few days every month to document where you are in the life that you're living. It's something that I really started to think about after having a conversation with Cole Younger way back when. I think it was around like episode 35 or so of my podcast. And he kind of made me think about documenting just the mundane and the boring of today and what that can mean for the future.
Some things I shoot for the future, especially like street scenes that are kind of boring, but like some of my favorite photos. Like if you look back to the 30s or 40s in LA, it's just like a normal street scene, but it's so cool now, you know, because nothing looks the same. People aren't dressed the same. Those buildings aren't there anymore. those cars like you'll never see on the streets again, horse and carriage, or like I've been thinking like that for like the last 2-3 years. Something that's gonna be cool in like 20, 30, 40 years.
Have you ever stumbled across old footage of yourself or a VHS tape of when you were younger? You can sit down and watch this boring ass tape for an hour and you can just be enthralled. And then at some point along the way, my parents and myself, we just stopped documenting. Yeah, sure, today we have Instagram and we can post these polished photos and videos, but those are really the highly curated moments. I'm talking about the moments in between, the moments when you're just hanging around the apartment, hanging out with your friends, hanging out with your family. This is something that I've started to do more of. I've started to just take a camera home with me, just to get a feel, just to have that experience in the moments. I have no expectation, no idea of what this could potentially be in the future. Now, obviously, it's easy to get out of hand and to just do this too much and document all the time and freak your family out, which I certainly have done. But even if it's just a couple minutes here and there, there's definitely those clips that I wish, looking back at 5 years ago, I wish they were longer. And it's something that I'm currently doing now. Document more to be able to have those experiences to look back at in the future. Use moisturizer. Acne was one of the biggest excuses that I had early on for not filming myself, for not putting myself on camera, and for not starting this YouTube channel sooner. It was terrible for my confidence. I didn't know what it really meant to have good quality skincare. It was really misinformation that I was presented. Every commercial that I saw said, hey, just apply this product to your face and then you're done. And it was acylic acid, it was benzoyl peroxide, it was these chemicals that would strip your face of the natural oils, and it would make, personally with my skin, it would make it really itchy. So I'd be more prone to scratch my skin, which meant that my acne would get much worse because I was getting more dirt in my pores. The one person that undoubtedly helped me the most with my own skincare routine is Natalie, so I'm gonna give her a little moment here to help you guys out.
You should be asking yourself, am I moisturizing, exfoliating, and cleansing? You know, it's really important to cleanse twice a day, morning and night, to exfoliate 2 to 3 times a week, and to moisturize twice a day after you cleanse. Those 3 steps are really, really important.
Thanks, Natalie.
You're welcome.
Speaking of Natalie, number 5, go on more dates. So at 20 years old, I had just gotten out of a long-term relationship, and it was the beginning of what I didn't realize was to become the worst dating slump of my life. I didn't go on a date for 5 years. I made a lot of excuses, like I was focusing on my business and I just didn't have time to date right now. But if I was being honest with myself, I had eventually built up a deep-rooted anxiety about going on any dates. And it took a long time before I finally got the courage to put myself out there. I had just moved to Hoboken after moving out of my parents' basement, and I remember the first date I finally decided to go on instead of flaking last minute. And then I flaked last minute. And then I flaked last minute again, and I did it again, and I did it maybe 5 more times after that. This one was a really difficult one for me to get over. And the first date that I did go on, the day of and the day before, I was a wreck. I worried that I would run out of things to say, that she wouldn't like me, that the date would be awkward, that the people next to me would know that we were going on a blind date from OkCupid. I had all of these self-limiting doubts, and it was mostly based upon the fact that I cared way too much what people thought. And when I went on the date, it was okay. It was all right. It wasn't like a big deal. It wasn't a great date. We didn't have this deep connection. And that's what I learned, is that it's really not a big deal. And the more you put yourself into these uncomfortable situations, the more that you're gonna grow and learn about yourself, and the less that you're gonna make it become this really big thing, this obstacle that would be impossible to overcome. So I just kept putting myself out there. I kept going on more and more dates, not trying to find the love of my life, but trying to meet cool people, try to potentially meet some friends. And if I do end up meeting somebody, then that's great, that's awesome. And that's what ended up happening. Literally just one random swipe, I was on the toilet and it was Natalie. I wasn't on the toilet, but I ended up meeting Natalie through Tinder. And you don't know unless you put yourself out there. And a lot of times we don't put ourselves out there because we're worried about what other people will think. So fuck what other people think, just go out and do what you wanna do. Number 6, travel now. In the early days of starting my business, I didn't take any trips that were unrelated to work, and I never left the country until I was 25 years old. My friends and I went to Costa Rica. I remember driving from the airport to our Airbnb with a big stupid grin on my face. Everything was new and different. This was an experience not for my career or for my work or for my ambitions, it was for my life. Ambition can sometimes get in the way of your life. I had my head down for so long and came up with so many reasons why now wasn't the time to travel. But looking back, I realized that I had all the time in the world. You have to plan ahead and force yourself to take some downtime. Pick a slow month and block off 10 days to take an international trip. Book your flight so you have no choice but to go. Don't wait until you retire to travel. It's way more affordable than you think, and it'll build more confidence than you can imagine. Remember, confidence builds by doing. And I probably could have come up with about 100 other things that I would have done differently at 20 years old, but these were the big ones. I think if I were to correct for these 6 things, it would have relieved me of about 90 to 95% of my anguish as a young filmmaker, creative, as well as human being. So no matter how old you are, whether you're 20, 30, or 40, let me know in the comments below what you've learned since you were 20 and what you would have done differently. I can't wait to hear from you. Oh, hey guys, by the way, my podcast is coming back. The Ground Up Show, I took a little month break here to have some downtime, but I'm coming back with new episodes, and it's gonna be less focused on creativity. It will be a little bit, but primarily I'm gonna be delving into similar topics that I cover on this YouTube channel. So it's gonna be more self-development related. Essentially, it's gonna be like a companion to the YouTube channel, oftentimes talking about the same exact topics that I do here. So if you want to subscribe, go to groundupshow.com or go to your favorite podcasting app and search The Ground Up Show. Subscribe. New episodes coming every week. Can't wait to see you there. See you next time.